welcome to this talk show presented by Navkar Digital Institute. My name is Preet Shah. I'm a chartered accountant and a faculty member of Navkar Institute. Today with me is Professor Siddharth N. Surana, a chartered accountant by profession who is an educationist and has specialized in the field of taxation. He is not only well recognized throughout the country, but also globally wherever ICAI conducts examinations. He is also visiting faculty at WIRC of ICAI and an ex-faculty of Sukh Sagor Institute, Mumbai. Siddharth sir has more than 10 years of teaching experience in the field of taxation and has taught more than 10,000 students till date, producing meritorious students and numerous exemptions attempt after attempt. Popularly known as the tax guru, I welcome Siddharth Surana sir on board with us, where we will be discussing about common issues faced by students while preparing for the subject of direct taxes in the CA final level. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words, sir, and greetings to all those who are watching this.
All right, Siddharth sir. Direct taxes is one of the biggest subject of CA final in terms of content, I would believe. And personally speaking, it took me 25 days to prepare the subject of DT when I was preparing for my own CA final. So whenever a student thinks about preparing for direct taxes, the first topic that comes into his or her mind is PGBP, which has always been an important chapter. Like Correct. Even now, if I see that question 2 is always fixed for PGBP. Correct. So according to you, what should be the approach of students with regard to this topic?
So, sir, PGBP has always traditionally carried importance in CA exams, both intermediate, which was earlier IPCC, and now CA final exams, both in old as well as new syllabus. And even before we had the change in paper pattern, when we did not have MCQs, PGBP at that point of time was also fixed as question number 2. In those days, it used to be carrying 16 marks because there was no MCQ. So question was 1, obviously, as we are aware, was only 20 marks, and 2 onwards it was 16. And now that 30 marks are dedicated to multiple choice questions. So the weightage of every individual question thereafter is only 14 marks, and which makes it 14 into 5, 70, where question number 2 is always fixed for profits and gains of business or profession. So that way, if we are, now that we discuss this, we are aware that PGBP is fixed means fixed. And if the student approaches a question on profits and gains of business or profession in a structured manner, if obviously you have to learn provisions. Once you are learning the law, there is prohibitions are indispensable. Provisions are indispensable, pardon. You have to learn the sections. But over here, there is a style, there is a trick that you have to follow. When every amount is given in the question, all you are required to do is look at that amount, and on the basis of the provisions that you have been taught in class, just decide whether that particular amount will be added in your net profit as per profit and loss account or subtracted. Or there may be correct treatment in account so that you don't have to do any effect. The only objective of the student while approaching the question should be add less or no effect. And instead of thinking about the entire question at one go, it is always advisable that the student should break up PGBP. So if PGBP sum is coming for 14 marks, you will get 1 or 2 marks for every individual adjustment depending upon the difficulty level. So what you should do is think about one adjustment at a time. Look at what the assessee has done in accounts. That is always going to be given to you in the question, because as we are aware, PGBP sum will always start with the net profit as per accounts, and then we have to make the adjustments and make it in accordance with tax provisions. So all you are required to do is start with the net profit amount, and then one by one look at the individual amounts in the question. Decide whether that amount is in accordance with tax provisions or no, and accordingly give effect. And you can make it, if you break a long thing into small parts, small and easy parts, you can actually end up making it very, very easy and getting about 12 to 13 marks out of 14. In fact, 14 out of 14 is also very, very easy. You can easily manage that if you follow this trick. And on this trick, let me tell you, sir, when I do business profession in class also, we spend more than a couple of hours. Sometimes we spend almost one lecture only to make students understand that how this trick can work for getting good marks in the exam. Obviously, we discuss the provisions and the logic behind the provisions, but also to score good marks, we discuss this. So all the students that have studied from us definitely are aware of the trick that I am talking about, and this can obviously help even those students in general, the other students also.
Yes, definitely, sir. This will definitely be a value addition to the students, and this easy method, I wish I had known that, but this easy method will definitely help them score more marks.
Correct.
Sir, now that we are talking about important topics, we understood about PGBP, how to go for that particular chapter, particular question.
Correct.
I believe that out of 100 marks, 30 marks is dedicated to international taxation. A general paper pattern that I have seen, 30
Correct.
marks is dedicated to international taxation. So, what topics regarding international taxation do you feel are important on which students should focus more?
So, sir, students are definitely aware that now the paper number 7, the name itself has changed from direct tax laws to direct tax and international taxation, where a dedicated mandatory weightage of 70-30, that is 30 marks dedicated weightage is going to be given to international tax, that people are aware of. If we talk about the attempt till November 20, we have old syllabus also, where in old syllabus, international taxation was not a mandatory part. But with my experience, I can tell you that even when there was no dedicated weightage, even in the old syllabus paper, by default, about 20 to 25 marks from those chapters of international tax always used to come only. So it is not that in new syllabus something extra has come. It is same only. Now, with respect to those 30 marks, what is going to be important is what you have asked me. So I must tell you the 3 most important chapters. That way there are about 7-8 chapters in international tax, but the 3 most important chapters which will carry maximum weightage out of 30. So good about 15 to 20, sometimes more than 20 marks will be covered in these 3 chapters only. The chapters are double taxation avoidance agreement. In institute study material, it is put by the name of double taxation relief. So there is unilateral and bilateral 2 types of relief available. There is a chapter called transfer pricing, where whenever you are having transactions with your associated enterprises, then for tax purposes, you have to compute them at arm's length price, which is going to be a very, very important chapter. Again, whether old or new, because right now we are talking about the August 20 and the November 20 both attempts, where old and new both are going to take place. Obviously, from May 21 onwards, we have only the new portion exams. But these chapters have traditionally been always important, whether in old syllabus or new syllabus. So DTAA, that is double taxation relief, transfer pricing, and then there is a chapter called non-resident taxation in institute study material. With due respect, I feel that they have not drafted that chapter properly when it comes to the study material, because what they have done is from the first section to the last section of income tax, wherever there is any provision which is applicable to non-residents, they have covered everything in one chapter. In fact, certain provisions of income tax are applicable to both residents as well as non-residents. They have covered that also because non-residents are covered. Actually, that chapter should have been exclusive provisions only for non-residents, which are actually not applicable, but they have not done it that way. And when we do non-resident taxation in class, what we actually do is we cover a little bit in chapters called NRI taxation, in a chapter called special rates. Then there are some sections of presumptive taxation of non-residents, like shipping business or aircraft business, such presumptive because they are related to business profession. We cover in business profession. Thereafter, whenever we are making a payment to any non-resident, it is compulsory that you deduct TDS, because obviously we cannot recover money from people who are no longer in India. So the TDS chapter covers certain provisions about non-resident. So when we study in class, we divide provisions of non-resident into different chapters. A little bit in NRI, little bit in special rates, something in TDS, something in PGBP. But together, this comprises of the non-resident taxation chapter in ICAI study material. Though in our classroom, we have split it into different chapters, going by a particular logic, related topics together. But that non-resident taxation chapter, double taxation relief chapter, and transfer pricing, these 3 chapters are the most important ones of your new syllabus. And obviously in old syllabus also, these chapters always used to be a part of the portion. And the good thing about these chapters, I would like to tell you that also, sir, though our discussion today and though this meet that we are having, this talk that we are having is only about paper 7, but the truth is that there is in the new syllabus, you know that there is a concept of elective papers where ISCA is removed. Yes, and in the elective paper 6C, we have a chapter called, we have a subject called international taxation of 100 marks. Out of 9 chapters in international taxation, 7 chapters are actually common with DT, and the chapters which I just told you, they are word to word copied in the syllabus in the module of paper 6, word to word. So if you have already studied them in paper number 7, you don't have to study a single extra word when it comes to studying your paper 6. So you have that added
That will be a
advantage.
dual benefit for the students then,
Double
sir.
benefit, absolutely, sir. So these are the most important chapters when it comes to international taxation, sir.
Absolutely, sir. So I believe that students watching this show are definitely using your material, so they won't be facing any problems with regards to international
Correct.
taxation.
Correct.
So, but we talked about PGBP, we talked about international taxations. There are so many big chapters in direct taxes, and we all know that sometimes it can get really difficult to cover all the portions of direct taxes. I
Very
mean,
true.
while preparing also, and definitely before the examination, just one day before the examination. So can the students go for some selective topics or skip some topics? I mean, is it advisable for the students to do that?
To be very honest, sir, that now this is strictly my opinion and different experts can differ on this.
Absolutely.
But I always have a sentence which I tell students in class. And this is, sometimes some teachers have fixed dialogues that they fixed jokes they crack in class. And those teachers are actually then later on known by their dialogues. Many a times you are in the same profession, sir, you are aware. I always say this in class. In direct tax, if you don't study everything, it is as good as you have not studied anything. So once there is a question which says compute the total income and tax liability, it can have anything related to computation of political party, it can have individual, it can have HUF, it can have clubbing of income, it can have set off, it can have deductions under chapter 6A. Selective study is strictly not advisable for any subject of a professional course. So when the student is studying for the first time, so we believe that first time the student learns from us only in class. After we are done and the student starts self-study, it is the duty of the student to do all the chapters on the basis of the guidance that we give them, all the chapters without skipping anything, 100% coverage. Then as and when you go to your subsequent revisions, when it comes to your first revision, second revision, third revision, obviously you have to slowly and gradually cut down on the amount of chapters. And so if you ask me one day before the exam, we can always have a list of chapters. List 1, most important, you have to do in detail. List 2, you can leave. One day before, list 2, you can do them briefly, like overview. And list 3,
yes,
probably you can leave them. Chapter like miscellaneous provision, or a chapter maybe like tonnage tax scheme, the recovery proceeding. There are certain chapters which have never been asked.
You've already prepared beforehand, but that is necessary. Preparing beforehand is necessary.
First time study, you have to do every first time study, you have to do everything. You have to ensure that everything is done. Subsequent revisions, you can cut down on certain topics, which we always make a video on last day revision and we release it for the students. So one day before the exam, which chapters they can leave. I preferably do it only when paper 6 is going on. So when the students are writing that exam, I record that video, because if I tell the students beforehand, then you know what is going to happen. They are not going to do those chapters even in their first study. So I always prefer to give those chapters one day before the exam. The video, it's just about 15 to 20 minutes. It is released also just about one day before the exam, so that students can exactly get guidance about how they should go about during that 1.5 days. Otherwise, first study, everything has to be covered. As simple as that, sir.
Right, sir. In fact, sir, I've also heard that you have also conducted a revision lecture just before the examination. That is, you have conducted complete revision of DT on Facebook Live. That's what I've read about you. So even that is definitely very helpful.
This will involve sir saying a few good things about myself. I hope it doesn't get edited later on. But the truth is that, sir, these days, because you know the situation about the COVID-19 pandemic, and most of us are locked down, and educational institutions, I don't see that they can function for the next few months also.
Yes,
so obviously everybody is now into online coaching, live lectures and all that. But I would like to say it with a lot of grace and the truth is that first time in the field of teaching, an online live lecture where the professor is speaking and students are simultaneously asking their doubts. A live lecture I had done Facebook Live way back in 2017, 6th October 2017. I distinctly remember that date also. And in fact, video lectures I had started in 2013 when there was no concept only of video lectures in our country. So I am very much comfortable with this online live teaching kind of scenario. And to answer your question, yes, sir, I did it in 2017 online live lecture. I revised the full subject of DT with students. I had students from right up to Singapore. There was obviously Singapore does not have ICCA exam center, but the student had gone there for self-study to get isolation. CA students have spent their entire life in isolation. Any which way, this COVID-19 is nothing new for them that way. So, and there was one student from US also. So, you can say that yes, that revision lecture was very, very successful. And
That's
since
wonderful,
then,
sir.
I always release revision lectures separately for my full course students. Once they are done with that, then they can go for the revision lecture also. It revises your full portion one day before your exam.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, I had some other questions with regards to the subject. That
Yes.
there are a few topics like capital gain and assessment procedures, which are
Correct.
very lengthy.
True.
Okay, and
Yes.
assessment procedure, in fact, apart from being lengthy, is also theoretical. So, can students can they take any kind of calculated risk with regards while preparing for these topic?
Sir, to be very honest, if I talk about I just told you that I divide chapters into list 1, list 2, list 3, and list 1 comprises of the most important chapters, which you have to study one day before your exam also. So you may not be able to study the entire syllabus, but you still have to study certain chapters, PGBP, for example, or in international tax transfer pricing, double taxation relief, for example. In that same list, also you will find capital gain and assessment procedure, because before MCQs, capital gain always used to come as a compulsory question of 10 marks, not even option, compulsory question. And even now, on and off, capital gain is continuously being asked. If not as a main question, it can always come as an MCQ question. They can give you a situation and tell you what will be the cost of acquisition in this particular case, or calculate the amount of capital gain, or calculate the tax liability on this capital gain. Plus, as we are aware that the stock market capital gain has undergone substantial change in the recent past. Those long-term capital gains which were earlier exempt have now become taxable. Those situations can also be converted into practical sums. So chapter like capital gain cannot be skipped. It is advisable not to take any risk out here. From your first study till your last study, you have to do that. And same goes for assessment procedure also. Assessment procedure will involve a lot of practical knowledge, but then when we do assessment procedure in class, we make sure that every provision, especially because learning of time limits in assessment procedure is a little difficult. So the more you revise, you are able to learn it. We ensure in class that when we are doing assessment procedure, we ask the students to repeat the time limits with us again and again in class, and we make sure that they have memorized assessment procedure in class, mainly because a lot of students may not get a practical exposure of visiting income tax department during their articleship period. Very few people are privileged enough to get that exposure. So those students find it a little difficult, and therefore it is necessary that we make them learn in class. And thus these two chapters are very important. Taking a risk is not actually advisable, and here you again cannot go for selective study also. You have to do just about everything in these two chapters also. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, absolutely. We've already done that we won't, I mean, the students have already understood that they don't have an option to go for selective subjects, or they cannot run from any of the chapters. So
Correct.
now that we were on the assessment procedure topic, many students were wondering whether they should memorize the time limits, as you said right now, that in the class, obviously you make them memorize it. But before the examinations, there are so many time limits and penalty, even various penalty quantums are there. So these two are areas, there are quantitative things that whether the students should memorize it or not.
Let me come to them one by one, sir. First, if I talk about the time limits of assessment procedure, the time limits only of assessment procedure are the most critical aspect. So, assessment procedure obviously will involve only theory questions. That question will require you to answer whether the action done, whether it is the assessee or the assessing officer, whether that action is valid or invalid. So, if the assessee is filing his return or revising his return, whether it is valid or invalid, the original return or the revised return, or in case it is belated. Likewise, the assessing officer will start his process by issuing you a notice and complete his process by passing the order. And for every task, whether by the assessee or by the AO, every task involves a time limit. So the validity of the action itself, whether the return or the revised return or the belated return or the notice, a particular notice is valid or invalid, it will depend on whether it was issued within the time prescribed for them. Likewise, whether a particular order is a valid order or invalid order, again, whether the order was passed on time. So time limits are the most critical aspect of assessment procedure. It will only decide whether your answers will be correct in exam or no. Thus, time limits are required to be studied, and which is why in class we put extra effort. We make sure that the time limits of assessment procedure are learned by students within class itself, so that they can approach the questions in a better way. And to talk about the second thing that you asked with respect to the time limits of penalty. So earlier, penalty questions used to be, there is only one section in penalty 270A which involves solving a proper sum, and it can come for about 4 marks maximum. Okay. Otherwise, penalty quantums were generally 1 mark. So penalty was like MCQ question even before MCQ introduced. It was like an objective question. I'll give you an example. In May 17 paper, they asked a question of 3 marks. Discuss the quantum of penalty in the following cases. May 17 question paper I'm talking about.
Okay.
Not getting a tax audit done under 44AB, not getting a transfer pricing report under 92E, and not replying to special audit notice under 142(2A. What is the quantum of penalty? So
that is student just 1 mark each.
1 mark each. It was a 3 mark question. So basically, if you observe carefully, if the student has written the quantum of penalty correct, for transfer pricing 1 lakh, or for tax audit 0.5% or 150, whichever is lower, or 10,000 rupees for not replying to a notice, if you have written it correctly, then even your enemy cannot take away your marks if the enemy is checking the paper.
Absolutely, just one objective.
So without MCQs also it was an objective question, and now with MCQs they can always not maintaining books of accounts or not, they can always incorporate penalty questions in MCQs. So MCQ being 30 marks, it is important to learn the quantum, and which is why in our textbook, again, once we finish the penalty chapter, I have made a chart, section default amount of penalty, section default amount of penalty. 1 day before your exam, it can work for your very, very quick revision. You can revise that. And if I talk about that section 270A, which could have come for a 4 marks, now what ICAI does is, if they want to make the paper lengthy, they can ask that 4 mark sum by way of MCQ question. So they can make that 4 mark sum an MCQ question, give 4 options, 1 of them will be the correct answer, and the other 3 the wrong answers, if they want to make the paper lengthy. So basically, whether as a sum or as MCQ question, penalty quantum can be asked. Weightage may not be very high like PGBP, more than 10 marks or something, but at least about 2 to 3 marks weightage, but which is also a good number. 3 marks can make a lot of difference. So penalty quantum, you can revise quickly from the chart that I give you behind the textbook. It is like that, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this was the answer with respect to the time limits of assessment as well as the time as well as the quantum of penalty.
Quantum of penalty. Yes,
correct, sir.
Sir, a CA student would definitely know the importance of 3 marks and would definitely go for time limits as well as quantum of penalty, even if it means to memorize them. So guys, you now know that these things will fetch you your precious passing marks. Okay, so there's no running away from your time limits or penalty quantums. All right, sir. Sir, another topic that I wanted to discuss is TDS. That it is such a topic in which majority of students have come across during their articleship also. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And they are very well familiar with TDS and their provisions. However, from exam point of view, do you think the students need to memorize the rates and the monetary limits of TDS?
So the first thing that I say whenever I enter any class is that if you think that your articleship knowledge makes you an intelligent student of taxation, then you kindly throw it in the dustbin and talk to me. So what happens is, sir, the practical aspect is far different from the theoretical and the examination point of view. Practical aspects will result in a lot of debates, dispute. A particular transaction is covered as per what is the section or no, and we have a long judicial process right up to Supreme Court. So the practical knowledge many a times does not help. In fact, most occasions it does not help when it comes to TDS chapter. Here your hardcore focus, as you asked me, sir, should be on knowing whether first step is whether TDS is deductible or not deductible. It will depend on a lot of factors, whether the payer is covered in the definition of the payer as per section, whether the payee is covered, whether the amount is crossing. Monetary limit is very, very important. Very important, because only with the monetary limit you can actually decide whether TDS is deductible or not deductible. If the monetary limit has not exceeded, then in that case your answer will be no. And once you decide after all this that finally ho gaya, that yes, TDS is deductible, it can involve some other factors also, because in some sections of TDS, there are some blanket exemptions given that, for example, if a transporter is furnishing his pen, then there is no TDS if he has less than 10 carriages, no TDS. So you are going to be, or you are required to be aware of even those provisions, that in these cases, again, your answer will be no. After discussing everything, finally, when you decide that, okay, TDS is deductible, then comes the importance of the knowledge of the rate of TDS. Because on the amount that is being paid, only when you know the rate correct, you can decide what is going to be the quantum of TDS. And then again, with MCQ questions, TDS can be the toughest part of your MCQ, if you have not memorized the rates and the monetary limits. Because they will give you 4 options. Supposingly there is a payment of 50,000 rupees. They will give you 4 options: 5,000, 500, 0, or maybe say 1,000 rupees. So first of all, you need to know whether TDS is deductible or not deductible. If it is not deductible by virtue of some exemption, then answer is 0. If it is deductible, then you are required to know the rate. If it is 10%, then answer is 5,000, 1%, then 500, 2%, then 1,000. So unless and until you know the rate and the monetary limit, it is not possible that you can answer any question of TDS. And TDS always carries weightage. Let me explain that also now that you have brought it up, sir.
Yes,
First of all, MCQ questions can be very difficult on TDS if they decide to ask. In the MCQ that I have made, PGBP and TDS have got maximum questions that way. Then, secondly, TDS traditionally also, even now, there have been dedicated questions of 7 marks, 10 marks, 14 marks also sometimes. In the days when there was no MCQ question, TDS used to come separately for 16 marks. So TDS has always been a very, very important chapter. Even today, it is very, very important. Rates and monetary limit are mandatory. And at the beginning of our talk that we discussed the profits and gains of business or profession, sir, if you remember,
yes, sir.
I said that every entry you have to decide add less or no effect. And on the basis of every correct adjustment, you will get marks. Let me tell you, one of those adjustments in every PGBP sum has to be on TDS. So there is always going to be a payment which the business has made and not deducted TDS. First, you have to check whether it was covered under TDS. If not, then there is no contravention done by the business, so no disallowance of expense will be invoked. But if it was supposed to be covered under TDS and you have not deducted or deducted but not deposited, then how much amount will be disallowed? That means TDS will have impact on scoring marks in your PGBP sum also, which is again mandatory. And out of 14 marks, mark my words, sir, 2 marks will always be fixed dedicated for your TDS chapter. Fixed dedicated for TDS chapter. So apart from the MCQ and the direct questions on TDS, sir.
Yes, sir. So not only as a separate question, TDS can also be asked as a part of some other questions, some other chapter also.
Mainly PGBP, sir.
Mainly PGBP, yes, mainly PGBP. And so every minute details with regards to direct taxes is important. And we know that now that we have known about TDS.
Correct, sir.
Sir, other than these big chapters which we discussed about international taxation and PGBP and TDS, yes, and every assessment procedure, there are some other small chapters also like advanced tax or interest or recovery, etc. So how important are these chapters with regards to exam?
So, sir, like when you asked me the question about selective study, I clearly said that first time under all circumstances you have to do them. And yes, they are so easy that once you do your first study correctly and efficiently, sincerely mainly, then in that case, even if you have not studied them again, you can score marks and the questions are really very, very easy. They are not asked very often, but whenever they are asked, you can say that it is a donation given by ICCA. This is my classroom joke that ICCA should get 80G deduction for asking a question like this because 80G is for donation. This is my classroom joke basically. So these are small chapters. If the question comes on them, it is going to be a very, very scoring question. You can get full marks because even in the toughest of papers, no, they will always keep at least 40 marks which the student can easily score. And we have to target those areas which are easy and scoring. These chapters form a part of that thing. So it is better that you study it first time only so efficiently that subsequent study you can leave them also. But make sure that you practice the questions of these chapters. That is what the student is required to do. Sir.
Yes, sir. So that is basically a pot of luck for the students. And basically, if you want to do smart work in DT, this is what you need to follow. That in the first time, you have to put you have to be efficient. And after that, just before the examination, we can definitely do smart work if you have already done it the first time.
So I think, sir, the statement goes that CA exams are not very easy. So saying that CA exams are easier than 10th or 12th is, I don't know whether you should make that statement or no. But having said that, with due respect to everyone, I would like to add that the statement was to a certain extent correct. Only thing was that it was not framed properly. The correct framing should have been, if you plan properly, if you work smart, and if you start early. So a lot of students, many times what they do is they wait for the portion to get over. If the portion gets over in the class, then they get their office leave, then they start studying, then it is going to be very difficult. If you work smart, every day what is taught in class, if you revise it on the same day, it is fresh also in your mind, then you can make CA easy, very easy for you, provided you work smart and you work sincere. Smart work is more important than hard work is what I would say. You can make it easy. So sentence to a certain extent was not framed properly. which created actually a controversy. Otherwise, smart study can always help you when it comes to your CA
Professional
study.
exam. Yes, definitely,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Definitely, sir. That's what the students have been taught, that always smart study should be the first approach.
Absolutely.
Sir, can you tell us something about the importance of the taxation amendment of ordinance passed in 2019, taxation amendment ordinance passed in 2019, covering section 115 BAA and BAB from the exam point of view, only from the exam point of view?
Yes, sir. Definitely. So, sir, that's basically 2019 was a very, very tough year for direct tax professors. I must tell you that. So there was an outgoing budget given by the outgoing interim finance minister Piyush Goyal, sir, 1st February.
Yes.
Then new government Nirmala ma'am gave a budget on 5th of July, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, nowhere, suddenly on 20th of September, she announced something called the Taxation Law Amendment Ordinance, drastically relaxing the taxation provisions applicable to domestic companies in our country. So domestic companies earlier were covered in tax rate of flat 30%. So everything is applicable only to domestic companies. Foreign companies will be covered in flat 40%. That story is over. Domestic companies were covered under 30% tax, and very few companies, subject to satisfaction of certain conditions, used to get the benefit of 25%. But Nirmala ma'am introduced this provision stating that she gave a list of tax benefits. Certain tax benefits, if you leave, then I will give you concessional tax rate. Under 115 BAA, almost every company in the country will get covered. All you are required to do is leave those tax benefits and decide before the due date of filing return. And you cannot change once you enter the new provision. So leave those tax benefits, and every company in the country can take 25% tax, 115 BAA. And plus, to encourage manufacturing sector, and now the Make in India voice is becoming stronger and stronger day by day. So she also introduced alongside another section 115 BAB, which is a beneficial tax provision only for new manufacturing companies. So existing manufacturing companies will still be covered in BAA only. New manufacturing companies incorporated on or after 1st October 2019 will be covered in 115 BAB. And you'll be surprised to know this, sir. The tax rates, income tax rate of that company will be only 15%. 15% tax rate. That is lower than individuals also.
Individuals
if you observe carefully. Obviously, those individuals which go in higher brackets, it is much lower. This was an encouragement provision introduced. And as far as, these are, because they are recent, they are amendments applicable for both the August as well as November 20 exams. Right now, I am assuming that both exams will take place. When we are talking, I am assuming that both exams will take place. They are amendments applicable for EY 2021, automatically makes it very important for exam purposes. It becomes automatically very important. But one more thing which makes it very, very important was earlier, even now, in fact, we have a chapter called minimum alternate tax, which is applicable to companies in our country. And it is a very, very important chapter. So if you talk about last 16, 17 exams, it has almost come in 15 of them out of last 17 exams is what I would say. But the beauty of these two new sections, 115 BAA and BAB, is that once a company opts, these are optional provisions, once a company opts for these two provisions, BAA, BAB, wherever you are eligible, then minimum alternate tax will not be applicable to those companies. That company will get exemption from applicability of minimum alternate tax. That is the biggest advantage of going for the new taxation provision. And we believe that, sir, most companies of our country will preferably shift, because the rates are also low, plus MAT is also not applicable. So practically these provisions are going to become very, very important. And ICAI has a system. Anything which is practically important, they make sure that they ask in exam also. So somewhere inside, I have a feeling that yes, these sections can be important when it comes to your upcoming CA exams, both August as well as November 20. Yes, sir.
So practically also these sections are very important, and as far as exams are concerned, even then these sections are very important. Pretty sure, sir. So
Yes,
students wanted to know about whether there can be any practical questions with regard to buyback of listed shares under section 115 QA.
Okay. So again, sir, this was also an amendment. First amendment, there were two amendments in this. First amendment came in the budget of 5th of July, the final budget of 2019. And there was some a problem with that amendment, and therefore another amendment was brought in the ordinance of 20th of September. So the amendment goes like this, that 115 QA basically covers buyback of shares. And till last year, that is till the previous year 18-19, it covered only buyback of unlisted shares. Unlisted. What happens is, a company has to pay tax on behalf of its shareholders. So when a company is doing buyback, as we are aware, buyback was a part of the portion of accounts audit law in inter and accounts audit law in final, because it is a part of company law, sir. So students are aware that when a company wants to reduce its paid up share capital, they do buyback of shares. If you realize, sir, it is resulting in a capital gain for the shareholder, because the issue price was his purchase price and the buyback price is his selling price. Obviously, buyback price has to be higher than his purchase price. Then only he will opt for it, because buyback is always optional for shareholders. This results in capital gains, and the system was that company will pay tax on behalf of shareholder capital gains. So company has to calculate the capital gain, buyback price minus the purchase price of the shareholder, and multiply by number of shares. On that amount, company has to pay 20% on behalf of the shareholder.
Okay.
And the shareholder will not pay any tax on those capital gains, just like something similar to dividend. When company pay DDT and shareholder don't have to.
Right.
Till November 20 exam, DDT is applicable. From May 21, DDT is getting abolished. So November 20 students have to study dividend distribution tax. This is the same concept. Now what happened was, on the budget of 5th of July, the final budget, Nirmala ma'am announced that now even listed shares will be covered in buyback. So automatically it becomes an amendment. Listed shares will be covered, provided the buyback has been done after 5th July. Because financial year is 1920. It started from 1st April. It is possible that before the budget, till 4th of July, there are companies that have already done their buyback and they were not aware that something is going to change in the upcoming budget. So till 4th of July, there will be no buyback tax on listed shares. From 5th July, it will come. That was the thing. But the problem was, there were some companies who had just announced their buyback scheme just before the budget, maybe in the first week of July or maybe in the last week of June. And the process was going to be done after 5th of July. Now, these companies are saying, ma'am, we were not aware that you are going to introduce some tax. Otherwise, we wouldn't have announced. So in the ordinance, what she did was, she said that if the public announcement was made up to 4th of July, then buyback tax will not be applicable on those shares also. So if I have to summarize, unlisted shares from 1st April till 31st March, full year buyback tax was applicable, because it is applicable right from the beginning. Listed shares till 4th July, not applicable. From 5th July, it will be applicable. But from 5th July also, if announcement was already made, then on that also it will not be applicable. And again, considering this is an amendment, which was an amendment in the final budget as well as the ordinance. Amendments have always been important in CA exams. It can come as MCQ also, because the sum is going to be very small. So if not a proper practical sum, it can always come as MCQ also. So students should focus on this aspect. Almost the entire theory we have discussed also while I am talking to you, sir.
Yes, definitely, sir. Sir, regarding the MCQs that have been introduced, okay, these MCQs are not released into public domains. So how should students approach these MCQs? How should they cover these MCQs?
So, sir, it is believed that institute has got a limited pool of MCQ questions. They have only some selected MCQ questions, and they are going to be repeatedly asked in exams. And therefore, if they release those MCQ questions in public domain, then they have to frame new questions again and again, like they do for practical sums, and therefore they don't release. So it is very unfortunate that 30 marks of the question paper is not available only for the students. But the good thing is that because the pool is limited, so what we have done is, in our study material, for example, my MCQ textbook has got 1600 questions. So every MCQ of institute study material, whenever institute, right from the time they announced MCQ based paper, they released few sample questions like 50 questions, 100 questions, those questions. Then in the mock test paper, whatever questions they have asked. Then in the RTP, whatever they have asked. Except for final exam questions, all other MCQs are available for us. All the questions we have incorporated. And plus, on the basis of our knowledge, experience of professions, more we have incorporated. So basically, our study material, my personal study material, as well as the study material that is issued by Navkar Institute to the students, that covers just about everything. If the students study those MCQs properly, they have taken more than 25 marks. I am keeping a window of 5 marks, which is also a very huge margin that way. It out of 35 marks means you can say it's a huge percentage. But still, I am giving that benefit of doubt for some silly mistake. But more, at least a 25 or maybe more than that, you can easily score and bring in your pocket. So if you that way think, if you target 25 in your MCQ marks, at least 12 marks out of your 14 marks of PGBP sum, if you study your TDS, etc. provisions correctly, then scoring that 40 mark is never going to be difficult. As I said, you have to be smart. But then objective should not be that. If you are so smart, then you cannot keep 40 as your objective, targeting 50 for your aggregate or 60 for your exemption. There is no limit.
Not at all, sir.
So, if you approach it in a proper way, MCQ questions, everything is covered. And if students cover up our questions, then they don't have to actually do anything over and above that. They will be very well prepared to at least score 25 out of 30 in MCQ questions, sir.
Yes, totally, sir. There is definitely a huge pool of MCQs which Navkar students definitely know, and they can obviously check in the Navkar.
I am aware that everything that is covered in institute study material from start to end, everything is provided to Navkar students.
Yes, every corner.
I'm totally aware of that.
Covered. Absolutely, sir. Sir, can you tell us some more about the importance of ICI publications like the study material and the MTPs and RTPs? Like, how important are they for preparation of the examination?
Sure, sir. So, sir, ICAI primary material is the study material, but the good news and the good thing for the students is that in our textbook, 100% of the ICAI study material is covered. So, I have more than 400 in my, not talking about MCQ that I already told, 1600. In my normal theory classroom textbook, I have more than 400 practical sums in my textbook, and which covers the entire ICAI study material. See, ultimately ICAI is keeping this exam. So yes, you have to do what ICAI says, not what an individual professor or an individual class is saying. ICAI is the primary body. Exam will be conducted by them. Degree will be given by them. You have to give respect to their material. If that's the only question, I can finish it here only. But I will talk about them individually. Study material is completely covered. So if the student has done our textbook, then the student does not have to do anything extra, at least as far as study material is concerned. But the RTPs, and I always advise my students that 4 attempt RTP, your attempt RTP plus previous 3, and in fact previous 3 are more important. It should be a common sense that RTPs of your attempt are released so late that by the time the RTP comes out, the question paper is already many times decided. So the 3 attempts before yours, immediately before yours, those RTPs are in fact more important. Together about 20 or 25 questions are asked in every practical sums and MCQ. MCQ we have covered in our book only, all of them. Practical sums, some of them may not be in our book. So study material is covered, but ICAI RTP may not be there. So if you do those about 20-25, which makes a total of 80 to 100 questions, that is the best practice. There is no better place to study or revise. That is why it is called revision test papers. And once you are done with this, sir, last suggestion from my side to score the exemption is that the student should solve at least 2 mock test papers of 100 marks, preferably by sitting in the 2 to 5 slot so that the body clock also gets
it also works like
so you should at least 2 mock test papers. Only then you can stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself that okay, you are fit for the exam and you can go for the exam. ICAI study material will be covered. 4 RTPs is my suggestion and 2 mock test papers. At least this much has to be done by the students. Past exam papers I will not suggest because the law changes so frequently. In fact, past RTPs also many times answers will not match. But for practice you have to do it. Past exam questions does not make sense because the questions are repeatedly changing.
How about the paper pattern, or just to understand the level of paper, can the students solve the past examination?
Yes, sir. I was just going to come to that. Past exam question papers can be viewed by students only to understand the level. What is expected out of you? Only to understand the level of CA exam questions, you can go through the past exam question papers. Otherwise, doing the same questions is not that way a great thing, because you may not get the same question again for a few years now. So only to understand the difficulty level, what CA final direct tax is all about, for that purposes, because sometimes it is observed that exam question papers are far different from the mock test papers. Only to get an idea, you can have a look at the past exam question papers. Otherwise, past exam question papers do not hold that much importance, at least in taxation, because of the frequent changes that have taken place out here.
Definitely, sir. Yes. So, as per you, these 80-100 questions that have been prepared from RTP, mock test papers, this will definitely prepare the students for giving the examinations. Other than that, you have already guided us about the various important chapters, that is PGBP, international taxation, given us various ideas about the MCQ portion also, various chapters like capital gain and assessment procedure. Thank you very much, sir. I'm pretty sure this talk show will be very much beneficial for the students.
Thank you, sir.
They will benefit from this talk show for their upcoming examinations in August as well as November. And I wish all the students all the very best. And I hope this is beneficial for you. Thank you very much.
Good luck to all the students from my side also. Lots of love and blessings to all of them, sir. I hope they are safe, taking care of themselves, and also at the same time preparing for the exams. Very good luck to all the students from my side also, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
If you like this video, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more such videos and learn from our expert faculty members. press the bell icon to get regular notifications whenever we upload a new video. Download NDI mobile app to get complete CA course online. We value your support. Thank you for watching.